Fat Shark recently teased Terminator Space Marines in Darktide, and everyone missed it. Seriously. But it's really important to understand the context of what this could mean based on Fat Shark's philosophy on the possibilities of player or even NPC Space Marines in the game. So, let's figure out what Terminators could mean for the future of Darktide straight from the devs themselves. But first, I'm gonna need you to obey my cat! Hit the subscribe button. Alright, so Darktide's new campaign mode called the Battle for Tertium features the same missions we all know and love, but at the end of each and every level, there is a new debriefing cutscene. And you know your favorite mentally ill 40k enthusiast lady crawled through all of them frame by frame. The debrief for Complex 154/2F in Throneside, which ends with us manually transmitting a mysterious message, has a blink and you'll miss it moment right here. A lot of this screen is out of focus, but you can make out pretty clearly where it says Deployment Log Terminator Squads, as well as Recon Scout Drone Class. In case you need a refresher, here's the pertinent details of why our operatives go on this mission.
We've got an encrypted report that's transmitting to a listening station up in the Big Black. It can't be sent from the Morning Star, so we need an alternate method. A ground-side complex dish.
So this message is of such a sensitive nature that Grendel doesn't trust it being sent from the Morning Star, and not even our commanding officers know what's in the message or exactly where it's going. Based on this debriefing, it's pretty clear this transmission has something to do with Terminator Space Marines and drones. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, hot damn, sounds like we're calling for some backup, you may want to temper those expectations. In late June of 2025, Shack News published an interview they did with Darktide's design director, Victor Magnuson. I'll put a link to the entire interview both in the description of my video and in a pinned comment so you can check out the full thing on their channel if you want. Magnuson expanded a bit on Fat Shark's philosophy about Space Marines, specifically in the context of player classes and what we might expect to see added to the game for characters we can play as.
Space Marines confirmed, right? That's the...
No, I mean, the thing with the Darktide is that there are no Space Marines. Like, you play as a human. That is the goal of the game, to portray like the human side of Warhammer 40,000 and how it would be to be a normal person, or at least like maybe a military, but like quite capable, but still a human being, and not like space god, space marine that lives for 10,000 years and is able to like kill everything they see.
It's important to note the emphasis put on the scope of what's being addressed here. Space Marines don't exist in Darktide in a capacity that we will get to play as them. Given what our operatives are capable of, we're already impressively deadly. Bringing Space Marines into Darktide as player characters would completely throw off power scaling. In order to properly bring that power fantasy of a playable Space Marine to life, we'd need to be able to grab a beast of Nurgle by its tail, spin it around, and chuck it like Bowser from Mario 64.
And that's the difference too. Like, you wanted to tell a story that was about mortality, and Space Marines in the lore also, they're set in very specific situations. They're there for a reason. They're death squads, they're elite units of the Navy SEALs, right? Like, so it wouldn't make any sense for them to be like, why would they be at this forageable planet going down? No. You know what I mean? Like, for not knowing what's down there. They make them in after, but not now.
No, we usually think of it, if the Space Marines arrive, the war is over. Like, the planet has given up. Like, okay, they're gonna demolish the whole planet. So we're trying to stop that from happening, basically. Yeah.
Again, the context here is that loyalist Space Marines are the top echelon of power for the Imperium. They don't have a horse in the race about what happens to Atoma. It's a hive world with an emphasis on manufacturing. The Adeptus Arbites have moved in to restore the tithe. The war itself is being overseen by an Inquisitor and his retinue. For an uprising cult and a single traitor regiment of guardsmen, the situation is pretty well handled. Our goal as characters in Darktide is to try and prevent an escalation in response from the Imperium, up to and including deploying the Adeptus Astartes, because it would mean a result similar in gravity to Exterminatus. So then, how do we explain what this relay station transmission means? Well, there's really only one of two things it could mean. One is that this is a nothing burger and it's just a red herring. The deployment log is referencing a deployment of Terminator squads elsewhere in the active theater of war, reasonable candidates might be a planet like Nox Alpha. They've been let loose somewhere else in the Mobian domain, but not on Atoma. But if that's not the case, the only other option that's really left is that this isn't a deployment log of forces we have called in. This is a log of enemies that have been deployed against us on the battlefield. And there's one key detail in this one tiny screen that makes me think this is the case. Along with Terminator squads, there is also the Recon Scout drone class. The Astra Militarum and the Adeptus Astartes don't use drones, but I can tell you one faction that's well established in Warhammer 40,000 that does, and that's Nurgle. Blight drones, fetid bloat drones, and plague drones are all iconic units of this Chaos faction. There's actually very few units called drones in 40k. You'll pretty much exclusively find them in Nurgle armies and also Tau. But I hope that we can all agree that we can pretty safely remove Tau from the lineup of consideration when we know this message also pertains to Terminator squads. I suppose you could call a Servo Skull or Servitor or other options we see employed within our Warband and Darktide drones, but at that point we're kinda just throwing spaghetti at the wall and we're all gonna have to argue amongst ourselves about what may or may not qualify as a drone. Going by the book, using the black and white named units we know of in 40k, we're looking at a serious upgrade in Nurgle firepower, along with some of the most terrifying foes the Chaos Space Marine force of Nurgle has to offer: Blight Lord Terminators or Death Shroud Terminators. Am I, Joe Plays Games, trying to tell you that our operatives are going to be able to fight and kill a Blight Lord Terminator, Death Shroud Terminator, or any kind of Terminator Traitor Space Marine? No, I am not. Stop typing that comment telling me how preposterous it is that our rejects could kill one. I know, I'm on the same team with you there. But this is another key hint that Plague Marines, possibly even the Death Guard themselves, are involved in the events of Darktide, and we may eventually encounter one. There's actually been a fair few nods to the Death Guard and even named characters from their ranks in Darktide. For example, Orthus, the namesake of the Orthus Offensive mission in which we have the boss fight with the Karnak twins, is from Greek mythology. Orthus is a two-headed monster fathered by a different monster named Typhon. To connect that to 40k lore, Typhon was the original name of Typhus, chosen champion of Nurgle and poster boy of the Death Guard. He's arguably more popular than even Mortarion, who is the actual demon prince of Nurgle and Primarch of the Death Guard. But Typhus has had his own model for decades before poor old Morty was ever given one. It's actually Typhus, first captain of the Death Guard, who leads his legion to fall to Nurgle in the first place, which mirrors Captain Wolford. When you get down to brass tacks, the events of Darktide are technically Typhus's fault. The walking pox, the zombie virus that has beset Tertium and is turning its citizens en masse, was actually created by Typhus himself. On top of that, there's the Miasmic Malignifier, which has been in the game since the Path to Redemption update. In the tabletop game, the Miasmic Malignifier is a Death Guard fortification, which means that you have to have a member of the Death Guard in order to take them. In fact, that's actually true for Poxwalkers as well, so take that as you will. Interestingly, the current Rotten Armor event in Darktide could even be a nod to specifically the Ferric Blight disease carried by the warband of the second plague company of the Death Guard called the Pallid Hand. Ferric Blight is a warp-based disease that infects metal, most often manifesting itself in armor, but it can also infect vehicles. In the announcement of the Rotten Armor event, Fat Shark says, "The Blight has mutated, twisting the very armor our enemies wear." The threat of the Death Guard looming in the background of Darktide really isn't that surprising, especially since Fat Shark has included what is clearly a mechanical demon in the Corruptor growth, or Demon of the Sands as we've learned Admonition calls it. Mechanical demons don't just spring up on their own in 40k, they're intentionally constructed, and where Nurgle is concerned, they're almost exclusively found in conjunction with the Death Guard, most often built or bartered for in cooperation between them and the Dark Mechanicum, which are the heretical version of the Adeptus Mechanicus. So the signs have been there all along, and now that Fat Shark has gone on the record reiterating that their stance on Space Marines in Darktide seems to include specifically player characters or even loyalist support, that makes the implication of deployed Terminator squads quite terrifying. Hopefully, we'll see the drone aspect of this deployment log manifest sooner rather than later, since I'm betting we'll finally be getting the arrival of demons in Darktide for this anniversary in late November or early December. Let's squad up and play some missions together on streams to strengthen our skills for the fight of our lives, and be sure to enlist in the Discord to be up to date on new videos, all the tea on Darktide updates, and find amazing like-minded nerds to hop into games with. Until next time, keep bringing the cleansing light of the Emperor to the unwashed masses, and I'll see you out there against the Darktide. Thank you guys all so much for watching and all of your amazing support. Special shout out to my top tier supporters, Leah S., Andrew Brown, Cabus, Cameron, Rich, William McQueen, Ben, Darkslide, Commander Orf, Ginge Dread, Yellow 13, Ripped Limbo, Spazatron, Jason Clark, Satan Xarxes, The Blackstone Chapter Master, D-Bot, Razzle Dazzle, Southfang 78, Jay, Sly, Jack Haytree, Gabby, Sten Dorkin, Erica, Mr. Schrodinger, Hee Hee, Bishop Tadius, Mateo, Mr. Strunk, CT5334, Evan Berger, Lormock, Yin, Bad Cat, Darkslide, Bride's Biscuit, Kron Chaos, Daniel Gerber, The Thunder Guardian, Aubrey Bessie, Freedom Frank, Macrove, and Big Guy.